Okay, Sisi Tam, happy to have
Hello.
you. Uh, so Sisi is principal and future synthesis at Futurity Studio, and she was previously social technologist at Alpha Telefonica Innovation Arm, briefed to build Moonshot to address some of society's biggest problems. And hi, Cecilia, it's very nice to have you from Barcelona.
Lovely to be here. Thank
Um,
you for inviting me.
In a recent podcast interview with Don't Stop Us Now, you speak of your hectic like life journey from Macau to the US and Spain, an impressive globetrotter. And you mentioned the roles of social technologists and futurists of future synthesis, one that creates new worlds from parts that have been taken from data, history, evidence, speculation, and imagination, of course. Could you give us some example of what this role cover? How does it differentiate from a prospectivist, traditional prospectivist?
Well, first, I want to ask you what is a prospectivist?
Prospectivist is someone who plans the future. You know, like they did in the communist plan. They used to do a 10 years plan
Yes,
and
yes,
see how the world
correct.
will unfold during these 10 next years.
Correct, correct. So, okay, so for me, a future synthesis, and it's a term that we kind of sort of coined because we didn't find a term that really explained us well enough. But you know, I did neuroscience a little bit a while back when I was studying, and I'm fascinated with how our brain works. And there's something called the schema, and the schema is when you explain certain things that you have learned. So, for example, you first learn the nose, the snout of a dog, the floppy ears, the tail, and then the schema is that these things brings together forms a dog. And this is how our brain learns, and especially when you learn something new, it attaches to the information that you have already had in your head. So you can imagine that the more points of knowledge that you have in your head, the more things that you can build your schemas on, and more new things could come about. So all of these experiences, and I mentioned that from Macau and Hong Kong and all these places, they add little points of information in my brain so that I could constitute new things. And this is where the creativity comes in. There's experiences where you have gathered this information and imagination and whatnot, and then the creative part is when you cross things that are seemingly not related. And that's when you come up with something new. And when we do future exercise or synthesizing futures, the first thing that we do is we do a deep research, deep tech research or deep analysis of that space so that we can gather as much information as possible. And then from then on, we do cross fertilization of different industries, different ideas, different aspects. So an example is that right now we are working on something called a taste sleeve. So you can induce taste on your tongue just with electricity. And that had been done for years and years. This is actually nothing new. And so we built this thing that sits on your tongue so that you can induce taste. Fun, right? But what we wanted to do is introduce this aspect of music in it. Can you actually play taste music on your tongue and orchestrate these tastes? So like sweet, salty, sweet, sweet, salty, sweet, just as if you would play a note, right? So what would that look like? What would the Spotify for taste sound like or taste like, right? And so when you start crossing these things that are unexpected, you create something new. And this is what we try to do as a future synthesis. And I guess the difference is that a prospectivist look into the future, possibly. I'm not very political in many sense of the way. So I only understand that from my perspective of the work, what we're trying to do is round up different aspects. So from the design aspect to the engineering aspect, from the cultural aspect, all the way to the scientific aspect of the whole to understand it, whereas a perspectivist look at it maybe from a more of a one-sided, more political aspect of understanding future.
Yeah. And regarding your work at Futurity Studio, um, Are you going down to implementation, or do you focus more the work on recommendation, designing of scenarios and sustainable business model? What is a typical time frame from an assignment that you complete?
We are very hands-on. We built a lot of prototype. When I say a tongue sleeve, we actually built one. We have been, I don't know if I can walk through. Like this is our prototyping space, and you can see all the device that we have on the table over there. We are very hands-on because until you don't build and you don't test, it's very hard for you to have insights. And so in our work in Futurity Studio, we take the research with all of these points of new information that we have, we build a future context around it. And so what does that future, possibly what does that future look like? Whether it is the economic paradigm, whether it is the political context, whether it is new technological capabilities, we built that world, and then we designed that particular item in that world and see if it is even possible. And then even though we're building the device or the prototype here now and this time frame, we can test it and understand it. So an example of this is that, and this is, so when we talk about prototype, there are two different type of prototypes. One is the experiential prototype. The other one is the functional prototype. And so we have been working on this project called polygenomic tomatoes, which is using decellularization of tomato. And so the plant structure as scaffolding for putting meat cells in it, culturing meat cells. So imagine a tomato with cultured meat inside. Scientifically, it's doable. It's not scalable right now. It's in its infancy. And so we don't have a tomato plant with meat in it, but experientially, we can replicate that. So that's what we did. And we invited some people over. And we served them what we call tomito. And we told them that this is a real thing that we have produced in our lab. And we served it. And we wanted to see their reaction. And some people thought that it was amazing. Other people thought that they would never eat such a thing because it's an anomaly. So we do exercise like this to see a firsthand experience of how people would approach these type of innovation.
Wow, very impressive. Actually, you spoke about the future of food consumption and there is a video of it at the edge of autonomous commerce in London. It's a very nice talk of you. And you pictured what the Spotify of food would like, and you picture different alternative scenarios. Is the food future one of your favorite topics, or do you have other future projects that you have the most at heart as well?
I love food. I love food. We all do. We eat all the time. So we have, currently in our Futurity Studio, we have 4 labs. We have the future of commerce, the future of food, the future of gender and equality, and the future of neurotech and interface. And so the reason why we segment this, while I absolutely love food, the reason why we have these 4 labs is that the 2 labs, the first 2 ones, they drilled on the concept of responsible consumption. And so, when we do these taste sleeves, one of the reasons why we're doing these projects is because right now, for example, in food, we eat because we're beyond sustenance. We don't just eat because we're hungry. We eat because we're bored, because we broke up with our boyfriend, because it's a social thing, it's a tradition thing, it's a culture thing. We eat for many different reasons. And one of the things that we're exploring is that what happens when you start separating these needs. Do I really need to eat that ice cream if it's simply for taste and not for nutrients, right? So if you can separate that, if I can induce taste, and induce the sensation and induce the experience of it without actually wasting calories and food and even your health credit, right? Then perhaps we can improve our own health and the environmental health.
Mm. So in this different lab, I imagine a future synthesist does not work alone and is part of a team of, in design thinking, we speak of T-shaped people. Yes. What kind of skill do you need in this lab to imagine this solution that are crossing technology, user behavior, impact, and business opportunity?
I think it's you're absolutely right. The T shape. I remembered Astro Teller, who I think formerly was the head of Google X, and he said in one of the article, he said the way they hired people is that they don't he doesn't want to hire just pure experts in his team, because experts knows a lot about something, but a lot about nothing at the same time, right? So having this T-shape and having the ability to make connections is absolutely crucial. And this is the part of the synthesis. The other skills, and I don't know if it's a skill, more of a character of personality, is that you have to have that curiosity. Right? You have to want to know, what could possibly are the outcomes of these things. I think some of these softer skills are definitely not taught. So being able to make connections, being able to be curious, being able to project in the future, and not being afraid to approach those things. I think those are amazing skills. I think education will be absolutely reformed in the near future, because our way of teaching people to have like a PhD in extreme expertise isn't going to fan when the future is changing so fast.
I like the curiosity, and when you mention that you were connecting the different experience in your life to create something, it reminds me also of the famous words of Steve Jobs: innovation is about connecting the dots.
Yes, yes.
How did your job change moving from Alpha, the Telefonica entity, to the Futurity Studio? I imagine now you have several assignments in different industry, while maybe at Alpha it was more focused, or maybe I'm wrong.
I have been an entrepreneur for a very long time before joining Telefonica. In fact, Alpha Telefonica was the first, I would say, big corporate job that I accepted. But I think my career path has never been linear. It was certainly not straightforward. As an entrepreneur, I think I learned certain skills like being agile, thinking on your feet, being creative, and so on and so forth. There's very, I guess, beneficial or advantages in thinking like an entrepreneur. And then in 2017, that was pretty pivotal point of my life when I went to Singularity University and had this opportunity to spend 3 months there in the NASA Research Center with 90 other participants to learn about how these deep tech could be applied to climate change. And so from then point on, I knew I wanted to dedicate my time in working on this. And so Alpha was Alpha had this position to ideate for social impact, and so I took the role as a senior social technologist there, and I learned immensely because one of the things that I noticed is that while startups are great, the corporates have the machineries to scale up very quickly, and so being able to apply some of these thinking as an entrepreneur and understanding deep tech and the social impact space, all of this thing combined into a corporate environment, but corporate innovation department is, it's going to amplify everything that I have learned.
And at Alpha, you were not too much, your work was understood by the rest of the corporation, or you look like people from another planet comparing to the daily job of a telco?
It's definitely a struggle, right? So we had our horizon fairly well envisioned within the organization of Alpha, and so we knew that we wanted to approach it outside of the telecom industry. That was like the first thing that we do, because then if we're innovating in the telecom industry, then we're just competing with the internal R&D. So that was clear. But then everything else is up in the air, right? How far is too far? How close is too close? Because outside of that realm is still, so we have this, we kept calling this like the Goldilocks moment, where, it's not too far, it's not too close, workflows. It's just, and it's not just how relevant it is to the industry or to Telefonica, but it's the right timing. It's just the right time to launch this, right? So in Alpha, we explored energy, we explored education, food, commerce. There are various different topics that we explored. And we had a list of criteria and a list of different phases to check how, almost like a dance, going back and forth to see how fitting it is. But it requires a very tight relationship with the mothership to be able to do that. And that is not an easy relationship to maintain.
Yeah, I imagine. I coach entrepreneurs, and they have sometimes wild ideas, and I always tell them that they have to maintain a relationship with the corporations if they want to leverage further on the road the resources of the corporation to distribute and commercialize their products and services.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we call them diplomatic rebels, because they are rebels, but they have to maintain a diplomatic relationship.
I love that term. You have like a great title, and you're like labeling people with this awesome, titles. I love it.
So you mentioned your entrepreneurship experience, and as a serial entrepreneur, you founded 3 companies: Makers of Barcelona, Fab Cafe Barcelona, and the latest allwoman.tech, a co-working, a maker cafe, and AI training school for women by women. Maker of Barcelona is not only a co-working space, but it's really a community of 500 members with local and international talent. And some of them are willing to collaborate and share resources and work a little bit like an agency. It's quite an innovative model. Could you tell us a little bit about this?
The idea is that, how do you reinvent what a company is, right? So all of these coworkers obviously aren't our employee, but we're all working in the same space, and we all have different talents that are sometimes very complementary. And so the idea is that a lot of times companies or in other organizations require a flexible means of working with others. And so how do you very quickly build a team? How do you quickly, be able to provide that kind of services to a company that could, say, hey, I need to build a website, and so we can pull up like a designer, a copywriter, because we are creatively branded as a space. This is what the community is based on, and so we can provide that for companies, and this is what the agency works for. And so we didn't want to sell desks as a co-working. We're not a real estate. We're not, because space is limited, but talents is not. And so we really wanted to bet on that aspect of our community.
Yeah, very, very, very interesting model, and definitely very different from co-working space like WeWork and so on. So my last question would be about Cici. What are now your next challenge, and most of all, what is the best we can wish you for the time coming for you and for your own future this time?
It's really funny you asked this question, because like I love futuring, but I'm really bad at making my own future, or predicting my own future. But I'm working on a book with a co-writer with my partner, and it's going to be on the art, science, and business of futuring. And so hopefully giving a little bit, sharing our experiences of our processes and stuff to the rest of the world, so that this could be helpful for them. So that's one. And we are very much working on how can we scale this knowledge up, so that or other organizations could apply for themselves. So that's my immediate future anyway.
And when do you plan to have the book published?
I don't have a date yet. Hopefully within the year, definitely within the year. It's very the beginning of the writing. We have most of the materials, but just not the actual writing. So we're also going to be teaching, classes on this. So yeah, I think we're seeing more and more big companies in need of training and mindset shift and a little bit more of tools on their belt to be able to handle. And I think COVID really pivoted this because all of a sudden the system is no longer resilient as we had hoped before. And so everything that we thought we knew, it's shaken. And so they need to reestablish some kind of a system or some kind of a methodology to approach future not like they had it before.
Yeah, I think that this your approach is all the more relevant in the current context. And well, Cici, I want to thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you so much.
I wish you the best for your future and for your book, of course, and everything that can happen in your life.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.